Good morning, everyone. Okay, are we?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are live stream today. So, good morning. I'm Councillor Boyd Elliott, the chair of the committee. I would like to welcome you all to this meeting of Overview Committee that is being broadcast live, recorded for publication. Okay, we go to agenda item 1 to note the appointment by full council on the 11th of May 2023 of Councillor Boyd Elliott as myself and chairman, and Councillor Glyn Guilfoyle as Vice Chairman of the committee for the 2023-24 municipal year. That's just for noting. Okay. Agenda item 2, to note the membership of the committee for the 2023-24 municipal year as follows. Councillor Steve Carr, Councillor Jim Creamer, Councillor Kate Fole, Councillor Roger Jackson, Councillor Eric Kerry, Councillor Nigel Moxon, Councillor John Ogle, Councillor Philip Owen, Councillor Francis Perdue-Haran, Councillor David Shaw, and Councillor Sam Smith. They were all in name order. I was going to look at your orders as we went round, but you've decided to shuffle it up. Never mind. Okay. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the previous meetings held on the 23rd of March 2023 and the extraordinary the 31st of March 2023. Take a show on hands for that. All those that were here. Okay. Just agreed I'll sign those minutes shortly. Okay. Agenda item 4. Apologies for absence.
We've had apologies from Councillor Jackson with Councillor Butler substituting, and apologies from Councillor Guilfoyle with Councillor Pringle substituting.
Thank you. Welcome anyway to all those substitutes, and thank you for giving up your time. Agenda item 5, declarations of interest by members and officers. We've got disclosable pecuniary interests. Any? None. Okay. Private interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary. None. No interest. No. None. No. All right. Agenda item 6 is the budget monitoring process and budget framework. I'd like to welcome Councillor Richard Jackson, and always a pleasure to have Nigel Stevenson to introduce the report. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Not a great deal to add to the report, actually. Members will all have read it. It's got the key dates of the budget monitoring reports. All opposition groups, I think, take up the opportunity of having briefings on them regularly. They get a lot of scrutiny through our internal processes before they're published. I'm happy to, between myself and Nigel, answer any questions on it, Chairman.
Can I just say thank you for the really good briefings we get as an opposition group. It's really very helpful and does make us understand it. Well, I don't understand it all, I have to admit, but yes, thank you. It's really appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so no more questions on the report. We'll move to the recommendations as detailed in the report. I'll ask for a seconder. Sam, Councillor Smith, sorry. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to take the vote if you'd like to show hands. It's unanimous. Okay. Agenda item 7 is the cost of living review progress report. Invite Martin, scrutiny officer. Yeah. Thank you, Richard. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'd like to invite Martin to introduce the report. Thank you.
Yeah, so the report is a progress report on the review of the cost of living exercise that was that's being carried out by the Overview Committee. So the report sets out what we did and when we did it. There's some actions in there that will be followed up. It's all kind of in there, and during the meeting, members came up with some really good feedback, and they gave quite a bit of activity for officers to follow up in the meantime. Currently, since this was written, I'm doing a lot of work like planning the second meeting. I've now had a very fulsome list, thanks to colleagues that take part in the council's financial resilience group that works to bring together all like cost of living activity across the council. So I've got a list of like 20 contacts to contact who we can now then pick who you'd like to speak to actually get their idea, their feelings of what's happening on the ground, of how the cost of living is actually impacting on residents, because that is the main thrust of this part of the cost of living review, is to find out actually what's happening on the ground, and hearing from people who actually deal with residents on a daily basis, what difficulties they're facing and how they're managing, and also how the situation is differing or impacting on residents across the county. So hopefully we'll get those meetings done sometime in June, because there'll probably be 2 or 3 just because of the sheer numbers of people you probably want to speak to, and then there'll be a third meeting before the summer.
So thanks for that. Okay, I'll open. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and thank you for that update, Martin. Can I just ask, and I don't mean, look, the cost of living crisis is affecting everybody, my residents included, but scrutiny for me should be focused on things that this council has control over. So I just want to know how many further meetings you propose to have. On paragraph 9, bullet point 2 says that members will further investigate to gain a better understanding of the county council's role and responsibilities regarding supporting our residents. For me, that is the only reason why you should be having a meeting, and for me that only needs one meeting. How much grants are we getting from the government, and how are we distributing it? Because that's all this council can do. So I just, what we do is good, and we should be scrutinising whether we're doing it effectively and whether that's getting to the right people. But we shouldn't be having 3 or 4 meetings to talk about the cost of living crisis that this council has no control over, in my opinion.
How the review was scoped, I think members really wanted to get an understanding of, do we understand, like I say, we have all these services which are doing a lot of positive work, but I think the members are looking for the understanding, does the council have as thorough understanding as it can, who are those people are, and what their requirements are. So it's getting a real understanding of the situation before, when we scoped it with the chair and vice chair, before they can start assessing what we're doing is sufficient, or anything that could be done slightly differently. Don't know if Nigel's got anything to add on that.
Yeah, I suppose it's also it'd be a good idea to find out, I think, in terms of what the effectiveness of the support from Nottinghamshire would be. So I think you're right, Councillor Smith, in terms of the angle that we should be concentrating on.
Councillor Creamer.
Thank you. Just on that last point, it is important to understand why we're as well. So it's not just about what we can do; it's why we're doing it, how we can do it more effectively, and what's coming up the road. So we do actually need to know those outside influences as well. But I've got a specific question on the paragraph 6, page 18, the global and domestic factors. And I noticed that on the absence of last year's autumn budget, which was a complete disaster, and there's no mention of that at all, and how that affected, because it was a massive kick, something like £10 billion if I remember right. So it's not even mentioned at all, the effects on that. I'd like to know why that wasn't included in the actual report. I'd like to record in the minutes of this meeting that the autumn statement led to an immediate rise in interest rates, which in turn led to significant mortgage rates for millions of people in this country. And not just mortgage rates. I mean, the rates aren't going to go down likely anytime soon. So it is important to have that review, as things are likely to not improve quickly, very shortly. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I've got some sympathy with stuff that's just been said. Certainly, what we don't want is lengthy meetings where we just get descriptions of what's been planned and I want to hear about impact. Yeah, and I think that's what the point you just made, isn't it, Nigel? Yeah. I mean, this report doesn't tell us an awful lot about the kind of top level information that anybody can kind of pick up. I mean, how long we had to do things already? What about baselining? How many staff are commissioned to look at this? So I think we really need some data. We need some empirical comparisons. We've got a suggestion actually for further recommendations that I think we've got around somewhere. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, we did. We've got some suggestions for some, but I think further actions, something like further actions taken to inform the next overview committee meeting, including empirical comparisons that include cost of living measures, so we can see what impact we're having there's no point just having lengthy kind of descriptive reports
Okay.
that really aren't moving us forward. And I think as well, the other thing that I found quite disappointing, we need some urgency here. I mean, it's been a really tough winter, and now we're in, what is it, May, aren't we? It's just been, and I think it's just been very slow, the response to this, which is actually quite disappointing. And of course, it's slow because of the nature of the meetings that we've been having. So a bit more focus on impact, please. I think that's
Okay.
the message.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point, just a note. On page 19, it says that the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee for Budget Responsibility notes that it's going to be accumulated 5.7% fall in the RHDI, that's real house disposable income. Does that 5.7% include the recent 0.25% increase in the base rate in that particular figure on that page? And also, can I note also on that page further down, there's been a targeted mail out of 17,900 homes. It doesn't say when that targeted mail out is going to be, and will there be more people actually needed to access free school meals because of that 0.25% increase, or even further increases later on in the year?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Shaw. I think it's because the Bank of England, that statistic was taken some weeks ago, and therefore it's their prediction, which inevitably they'll be wrong in their prediction. They'll accept that. So what it was trying to do is just give a based estimate. Yeah. So it's something for us to constantly keep in mind. I think what we discovered is that the council has been doing quite a lot, almost as soon as the issues arose. And I think this process, I take the point of Councillor Fole in terms of it feels like this scrutiny might have been taken a while before we got to this point. But I'm hoping that councillors will get some assurance in terms of the council has taken significant steps in supporting the residents. But I do take your point in terms of we now need to move on to the statistics and that understanding of the effectiveness of the measures that have been taken. And I don't want to preempt any recommendations that might come out of the scrutiny in terms of that action. But I was also, if I may, in terms of it's a snapshot, in terms of it's a short report, it's really difficult to actually then in this report put every measure and every understanding, and that's part of the issues in terms of putting a report, in terms of how much detail do you want to put into it. You'll always find a statistic or something that you think ought to be reflected, including, as Councillor Creamer mentioned, about the autumn statement or whatever. So that would just be grateful if council would bear that in mind in terms of what's in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, a couple of things, Chairman. On page 18, paragraph 6, the bottom bullet point after other circumstances, I'm just wondering what private landlords binging had got to do with the cost of living crisis. No doubt that will come out in the review. I'm sure it has a significant impact. But I think from what members have been saying this morning, it just simply demonstrates that this was not a suitable topic for scrutiny in its current form. You've got nowhere, from what I can see, and accepting what Mr. Stevenson says, that it's a snapshot, it's a brief report, that you've been wondering about Ukraine, you've looked at consumer goods and supply chain disruption. We have a very limited role as a county council in this, and that's by and large distributing grants that we get from central government. And that's where the focus should have been right from the very beginning. Are we doing that in an efficient way? Is there any improvement we could make? Maybe looking at what impact those grants are having. But to look at all of this, and we hear, well, we're going to be doing this in June, and I don't know what's going to be happening in July, and I suppose we'll have a break for August and then come back in September. And before we know where we are, a whole year will have gone past, and this topic will still be being wandered around. You might have another visit to Ukraine, I don't know. But for goodness sake, let's get some focus on this. Really, this committee ought to put a limit now on the number of meetings that the working group is going to have, and they need to come back to us with some tangible suggestions as to what we can do in the limited range of services that we provide in respect of cost of living. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Aaron. That's take that on board. Thank you. Do you want to? Yeah.
Just roughly, and like I say, this we've done a lot of planning with this. Ultimately, this review we like, because obviously it was such a huge factor when we looked at it. We've worked very hard with Nigel and chair and vice chair and other officers to really try and drill it down. So the first meeting was like a lot of context giving, a lot of understanding of what the council actually does. The second, like I say, it might be 2 or 3, just so we can speak to a reasonable number of people actually out there in the communities, was to get an understanding of the impact on local people. The third meeting is then to look in more detail of what the council is doing and assess that effectiveness. And then the idea is that this report is written over the summer, and then the final report is brought to the September meeting for consideration.
It's a bit frightening, Chairman, if we don't know as a council what we're doing and we've got to spend a load of time looking at what we're actually doing. I'd have hoped we did know what we were doing, even though we may not be doing it as best as we could be.
That's what. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I don't think we should get too embroiled in the reasons why we've got a cost of living crisis. We know we've got one. I mean, there's a whole herd of elephants in the room on this issue, and one of them, of course, isn't on here, which is Brexit. But the whole matter of the fact is that we've got the crisis. There are things as a county council that we can be doing. We have people who visit people every day of the week who are going to be in this circumstance, and we should be making sure that our staff are fully equipped to deal with people's concerns about their cost of living crisis. I hear what is being said from some members about the number of meetings. I was unable to attend the first one because I popped my Achilles trying to retain my borough seat. But at the same time, I think it's a hugely important issue. And I think it's also a dangerous precedent if this committee is going to start to tell working parties how often they can meet. You know, we've got a topic for scrutiny. It needs to be finished, and it needs to be finished fairly quickly, but not that quickly that we don't achieve anything. And we need to carry on with it. I mean, it is a huge issue. And, you know, perhaps one of the things we should be looking at is, you know, the Labour group proposed that we use our libraries as warm rooms, and it was thrown out. Why was it thrown out? That's perhaps something we should be looking at. You know, there's a lot more that this authority can do, and they perhaps ought to look at what some of the things that the districts and boroughs do in this regard, which are above just dishing out grants, which is a very important thing. But there's a lot more that can be done, in my opinion, and I think this is a very worthwhile working group. Thank you.
Councillor Ogle.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's just that earlier an opinion was expressed on interest rate cause and effect, and I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding because the budget doesn't affect interest rates. Interest rates are raised by the independent bank to fight inflation, and at that time there was a wider financial crisis. So that's my opinion on that, my take, and I think the statement was factually incorrect, Chairman.
Councillor Erdogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm disappointed that we've not taken the opportunity to, as others have said, to achieve any impact so far. And we have an opportunity to help residents. Take, for example, myself and my colleagues moved earlier on this year to ask parents to opt out of free school meals. And our estimate is that that may have assisted up to 1,500 pupils to be automatically enrolled into the free school meal programme. And this council has known about this now for months, and I've not seen any evidence of anything being done. as well as that, it would have additional impact in assisting in increasing the numbers benefiting from the pupil premium, and helping residents through the cost of living crisis is not just a priority for this council, but it's a priority across our whole communities. And I would hope that this committee concentrates on that priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purdue and Councillor Pringle.
Thanks, Chairman. The report is very much a committee report, from what I see, and I say that because of the inability for us to scrutinise the results and get on the tables that we talk about. And Councillor Owens mentioned Ukraine and strong demand for global consumer goods, etc., etc. All impact what's happening. And we've done a tremendous amount of things here, which you've pointed out in this report. There's no detail in what's actually been brought back from what we've done. So it's very difficult to see any benefits from the list which you put, certainly from the activity being carried out, reference to the cost of living crisis. And there's obviously a lot of work on in here, and we've got some results. And in fact, we've got results telling us that 14,600 residents are in receipt of pension credit, 16,700. There's no value in that, they're just numbers. If we could have some value in what we were expecting to get back, then we could scrutinise that and see if, as a council, we can do better, or if not, then we can move it back onto a government status for funding. So I really appreciate what's gone into the report. And again, I'm going back to Philip, because Philip says at every meeting that we go to, we have to scrutinise, and at the minute, we're just reading a committee paper, and I think it could have been more detailed with regards being able to scrutinise and support. Where support is valued, we could have done that. And we've got a lot of information without the detail that allows us to do that, I think. So, and again, the meeting scenario, I'd sooner not have this meeting talking about this, although I think we should be on this straight away, and have one meeting which allows us to cover that, to be able to discuss between ourselves and get to the bones of the matter, which I think we're probably going to do in the second meeting, with what you've said, Martin.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mike. Good point. Yeah. Okay, some really good points there.
Sorry, can I just suggest that we have an extra recommendation around impact? I mean,
This is the progress, so the impact will. Yeah, the impact will come from the scrutiny. Yeah.
well, I mean,
Second
I've got some suggested wording if you want it. The other thing as well is, of course, I know Jim raised the issue of not having the autumn statement. That was raised because you've listed under item 6 everything that you say has kind of affected cost of living crisis. The autumn statement isn't in there, which we believe it should have been. I say it doesn't affect you on interest rates. That's just a load of rubbish. I think. Anyway, there you go. But if we could just have something in there about we need to inform the overview committee meeting, including empirical comparisons or some evidence of impact. If we could have some work, if we could have something in there that actually commits you to bringing some data to this committee, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I think what I've heard the key messages from members are about focus and about the focus of the work, and it being meaningful and driven in order to look at the impact and outcomes is what I'm also hearing. So I think that here, what I think this is, and I think a number of you've commented on that, it's a summary of activity that has been taken. Now we need to go to the next step. So I think those points need to be brought out in the next steps, and I'm happy to have a look at that recommendation, see if it reflects as we go forward.
Thank you. Okay, we now move to the recommendation as detailed in the report. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Smith, thank you. We move to the vote. Show of hands, all in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, we go to agenda item 8, which is the all age carer strategy refusal of a calling request. And this is to advise that the council's constitution states that the monitoring officer will submit a report at the next available meeting of the overview committee, giving details of a request for a call-in of a decision that was refused and reasons for that refusal. As such, the report is for members to note. So let's note. So I'm to move the recommendation as detailed in the report and ask for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Take a vote on that. Thanks. That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move to item 9, which is the work programme. Martin?
Sorry, didn't know. Can I just raise something as well today? You whisked through that rather quickly.
Well, it's for noting. It's noted.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we do have some comments to make.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I quite agree with Councillor Fold's concern. You are pushing through this agenda as if you're in a hurry for some other meeting. Is that the case?
Okay. Councillor Fold?
Yes, so sorry, I wasn't kind of extension. Okay, just a couple of things I wanted to raise. I note the letter that's come, which you know is now kind of very it's a while back, but it just again, I haven't seen firmed up anywhere what we're going to do about the kind of secret informal scrutiny meetings. I haven't seen that set out quite clearly. That would be quite helpful. And it does say as well in there that no concerns were raised during one of these informal scrutiny meetings, and that hasn't been corrected anywhere as well, because we have the video evidence to kind of suggest that is the case. So it would be good to see that. And I mean, the other issue we've got as well is, of course, there's some of the issues that were raised. One of the reasons the calling letter for this was the same as the one that was called in. So there's a bit of fudging there that actually we're a little bit uncomfortable with, but just to raise that. So we were disappointed it wasn't called in as well, but there you go. Just in case this happens again and it gets addressed again. What channels are open for councillors beyond taking any really formal legal action if we're unhappy with the refusal to have a call in taken on? What can we do?
Okay, I'll let the monitoring officer pick that up.
So it says in the Constitution that the monitoring officer's decision is final. It's my decision about whether to accept or refuse a call in. Have to give you reasons, which I've done, and I've attached that today for the sake of transparency, so everybody can see the reasons. And obviously, we report here for every refusal of a call in, so that's another opportunity. What I would say about the scrutiny itself is, and we've touched on that a little bit already this morning, and we did talk about it at length at the call-in request that was held on the 31st of March, because there was some overlap in terms of some of the issues, and it was that whole notion about what was informal and what was formal and the lack of clarity. So we said we would develop a protocol and approach through the members' working group, which is meeting this afternoon. I believe Councillor Pringles coming to have a look at that and how we want to, so we can clarify, because there was a lot of lack of clarity. I think I'll just characterise it as, which I don't think it helps in either circumstance. But my judgment was that because it was described as not complying with the law, that wasn't correct, because they were informal meetings. So I just think we need to make sure going forward we're clear about that and everyone understands. Us as officers as well as members would be my observation there. So that's this afternoon we're doing that piece of work.
Just to confirm then, once you've ruled it out, then there's nothing further we can do. Okay.
Councillor Shaw.
Picking up on Councillor Fold, I feel that there are teething problems with the governance system of the council. We've got he say, she said, and the calling procedure is fundamentally flawed. The council's making the most of the unethical decisions, but as long as it's done within the government's framework, it's difficult to call it in unless it is because of a procedural issue not contained within the Constitution. I've tried to call things in myself and been told I can't do it because of, and it's just a statement. Can we have some more clarification on this? Thank you.
I'm going to bring Councillor Owen in, and then.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The Managing Officer has already alluded to this. We have a working group of the Governance and Ethics Committee, which is reviewing the Constitution. We've got a meeting this afternoon. And when we've reviewed the Constitution, because we accept that we have changed the way the Council is governed, and there will be improvements that can be made. And this is an all-party working group, And I get a little sick and tired of hearing the Ashfield Independents carping on when they are invited to those working group meetings. And I would advise members sitting around this table just to have a look at how many meetings they've actually attended and contributed to. So the opportunity is there to help drive improvements forward. And we will be looking at the Constitution this afternoon. And I'm hoping as soon as that's finished that we shall then move on to look at scrutiny, because from the comments that have been made this morning, not least by me, I don't think scrutiny is working in the way it should. And we hope to put together some pro formas that will help, particularly with things like call-ins, so that it's clear what needs to be done and how it needs to be set down. So we are still in a learning process, but I invite all groups to make sure their representatives turn up to those meetings. Then you can't say you've not had the opportunity to input and drive improvements.
So just to add, Councillor, and one of the things we proposed for this afternoon's discussion is about calling, isn't it, and about the process, and that's on the agenda. So
Councillor Smith.
yeah, and that will be because some of that reflects my
I
learning.
look forward to the contribution to be made by the Ashfield Independents, whatever they're calling themselves today, in that process.
Thank you, Chairman. It's always hard to follow Councillor Owen because I agree with everything he says, but it baffles me. It really does baffle me why there is so much muddy water between this informal and formal meetings. The informal scrutiny meetings allow us as councillors to do our jobs and scrutinise a particular issue that this council is responsible for. They're non-decision making bodies. It's informal and it's not public. And then guess what? The report at the end of that meeting, informal meeting, goes to a public cabinet meeting, where you can all sit in and write to the leader and ask to go and talk on that particular item, or be invited to and scrutinise it again. It is muddied water for no reason whatsoever, because in my mind it is simple, and we have to have the informal meetings to be able to do our job as scrutiny members.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Smith. You have a different view on what happened to I do. That is a fact. And certainly the issues, as far as I'm concerned, what Councillor Smith said, has already been carried out in the calling, so there's no reason for that. However, I think the point that was picked up was a point that we didn't see after the calling procedure and the decision was made. So I think it was a positive thing to raise to see if there was any legal angle outside of that call. No, there's not. Okay, that's the answer. No, there's not. Okay, I'm going to support Councillor Owen again on this committee. Please don't let it get out. But you know, we have detailed conversations, and nobody knows less than me. I'm guided by some really, really positive and experienced councillors and officers in these meetings, and invariably there's difference of opinion, but there's always common consent at the end of it. And if we can find something to change, if we could have a legal outside of the monitoring, we would do that and we would push it forward. So I think there's a lot of discussion that happens within these working groups, and really you guys need to be involved because of exactly what I'm saying. I think it was Helen that was on the committee earlier, and it is a good committee, it is a positive committee, and it makes a difference for this council. Whether or not you agree with everything or not, the decisions that are made for the benefit of the council, and there will obviously be edges that we think could be sharper here for all, depending on what party we're in. We understand that. But I do think Councillor Foles was something that raised that I'd never thought of prior, that we discussed. Raise it, if the answer is no. And I'm looking forward to the decision, to the meeting today, because of exactly being the first call in, and we've not done it before. Officers have never gone through before. I'm new to cabinet anyway, so I've never gone through this. So learning all the way in a positive manner is where we need to be. Hopefully we can do it. I think there should be something else outside of your decision. But I'll take that on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Yeah, we are all learning. It was our first call in, and we followed the process. And I think we're going to learn more from that. So I've got Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, very quickly, because Mike said most of it anyway. But when it comes to actually muddying the waters, it's a legal problem. If the public perceive it to be, and part of the problem was with these meetings were that X person was there, and it was agreed when that person may not have actually agreed with it, just because it was presented to them. So that's why it needed clearing up. That's why the working party's existence. It's a legal matter more than that else. Some people would be quite happy to say, well, yes, it does go to cabinet. But when the report says an XL was this at this meeting was agreed, it doesn't say that it was voted on and these 3 agreed, these 5 didn't. So it's a definition, and that's what needs sorting out. So it's not just muddy waters; it's actually a learning curve, and people have had genuine concerns, which was mentioned by Council Friday. Mentioned at the time about genuine concerns that it looks to the public like they've agreed to it, when they hadn't actually agreed to it, at least not at that point, and that's the issue. So hopefully that will all get sorted out for future meetings or non-meetings, whatever.
Just to say, yeah, and I absolutely agree. I mean, the issue we had was that our members were at some of these informal meetings, and then it was implied in the report that they supported some of the proposals. That was the issue. And just to say, go back to say anybody can ask a question at Cabinet. Well, I wanted to go and ask a question at the last Cabinet about this, and the leader refused that request.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded, and we've taken a vote. So, okay, so we move to agenda item 9, which is the work programmes. This item will be introduced by Martin. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've got our own work programme on there for overview, and then just for information, we've got the work programmes of the other select committees just for information. Obviously, the next meetings are the last meeting scheduled in this work programme. So just to advise that work will be happening over the next coming weeks and months with officers, chairs and vice chairs and committee members to look at what the work programmes look like for next year in advance of them coming back to overview committee at the first meeting in September for your approval.
Any members have comments or suggestions for the work plan? We've got Councillor Pringle.
Thanks, Chairman. With the speed of the Freeport and the issues at Teesside, I have it.
Sorry,
With the speed of the Freeport is moving forward, which obviously has a huge benefit. Assuming everything goes okay for us locally, and the issues that have been raised with Teesside nationally. Is there any way that we could bring a report back to see the differences between? I know there's differences, but to clarify the distances to make sure that the governance of the Freeport is not going to be fouled by the issues that are happening over at Teesside in any way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Considered. Okay, Councillor.
Thank you. One of the things, of course, we can look at with regards to the Freeport is the impact on workers' rights, because they can be different in Freeports, but that's another matter. Can I ask that we either here or probably the scrutiny committee that looks at young children and adults to have a look at the damning report that we've had with regards to people who are have children who are SEND. And I have to say that some of the messages I've had from residents over the last few days has highlighted a problem that is even worse than what the report actually outlines. So I think that is very urgent, that we need to look at that. And also, can we have a look at how much councillors are claiming in mileage expenses? We claimed enough over the last 2 years to drive to the Great Wall of China and back, and I think the disparity and the huge discrepancies and differences between different councillors need to be looked at. I appreciate that some will have duties that take them to schools and visits to people's homes, etc., etc., but that's not always the case, and I just wonder how much scrutiny is being done with regards to these claims. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you. If I could just respond to Councillor Carr on the SEND Ofsted report. My children are Families Select Committee are doing a review into EHCPs, which was a big part of the Ofsted report. We had our first meeting yesterday, 2.5 hours. It was very in depth, setting out how we go about the process of EHCPs, and there's more meetings scheduled for that to scrutinise whether the council can use what our neighbours are doing and deploy those skills into this council to be more effective on EHCP delivery. The Ofsted report itself, one of the actions off the back of that is that this council has to have an improvement plan. That improvement plan will be coming to my committee for us to scrutinise of whether that's being implemented quickly enough and how that's been implemented. So Ofsted is big on my agenda in my committee.
Councillor Owen.
Just to advise members that scrutiny of travelling expenses falls to the remit of the Governance and Ethics Committee, and I'm sure we'll be delighted to have a look at that at some point if that's a pressing issue.
Turn it off. With we can get the committee to agree on those proposed changes and any additional items. Take a vote on that. Thank you. All in favour? That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance. I'd like to close the meeting. Thank you.